Thank you for joining us, and thank you for viewing our second State of the Union news presentation. We're joined here with the Commissioner of Police, Darren Simons. But let us, first of all, in conjunction with Crimson Media Multi Media, we're bringing this program to you. Commissioner, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me, Trevor.
Yes, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yes, sir. I've been one that's been rooting for your appointment. So, yeah, congratulations.
Much
Tell us a little bit about who is Darren Simons, and for whence you came.
Who's Darren Simons? Well, both my parents are Bermudian. They are actually on scholarship from Bermuda in Canada, where I was born. So I've literally been back in Bermuda for the last 38 years. So Bermuda is a place where I've raised my family, where my wife and I have grown up. I've been a police officer for 28 years, I believe now. I tell everybody I love my job. If I had the ability to circle back again and start all over again, I think I would join the Bermuda Police almost without reservation. Might do some different things along in that career path, because that's one of the beautiful things about working for the police is you can have multiple careers within the career. There's so many things that the Bermuda Police does that careers can take very different paths. But I'm certainly glad to be where I am today. I'm looking forward to the challenge of being Commissioner of Police, leading the organization, and being able to move forward some of the things that I think are important in the organization or important to me. So it's like certainly a slightly different direction or angle or focus on how we do what we do in particular. In addition to the regular stuff about sort of making Bermuda safer and addressing what are without a doubt some of the key issues that we have.
What are some of the key issues that you want to implement sooner rather than later?
Right. So I think just and that question has a number of different sort of facets to it. But I think if you look certainly externally looking in terms of key issues in the community, without a doubt, we've got the gun and gang situation. We've got and there are spin-offs from that. So you might look at some of the challenges we have around drug enforcement, the impact of illicit substances on the community, and without a doubt road harm. Another one that we're looking at would be sort of vulnerability. So children, we've got an aging population, domestic abuse, things like that. So for outside looking in, those are some of the issues that the BPS would be focused on. Internally, we have things like leadership development, training around getting better around our response to domestic abuse. We are on a professional standards journey. This morning, I was actually on a training course that was around counter corruption. So how do we put policies, processes, change the culture of an organization to minimize the likelihood of corrupt practice occurring? Wellness. Oh my gosh. In the context of 2 years of pandemic, wellness, leadership around wellness, very important in the organization.
Good stuff. Let's start with community policing.
Yeah.
When I was young, it was always that police boss, police gymkhana, et cetera, et cetera. Is the community policing still very much involved as a part of your strategy?
Yes, without a doubt, community policing and building community trust and confidence sit at the core of how we do what we do, right? So we would, in policing terms, we would talk about the confidence cycle, which is, effectively says, the more the community trusts the police, the more information they give us, the more we can do and be seen to be capable guardians and and making Bermuda safer, which builds further trust and confidence, and it just sort of continues to spiral upward, right? Because the reality is, without the community's assistance, policing is incredibly difficult. Go back to Peelian principles. The community are the police, and the police are the community, or the people is really what that used to say. So very much community sits as a pillar of how we do what we do. So we have community officers. I know you probably may get to that. Recently, I have shifted for a very short period of time those officers and put them on a watch whilst we did some very targeted enforcement work in light of some of the recent gang challenges that we have been experiencing. But those officers are going to have either now or just imminently about to go back to their regular duties. And it was a combination of just assessing what those activities were about and the results that they were yielding. Also just managing the challenges around public confidence, that putting people there today, taking them out tomorrow, they've made commitments and promises, build relationships, and we just need to make sure that continues to occur within the community. Yeah.
Are your community police department, are they still targeting the middle schools, elementary schools? Do you still have officers that go and speak to our young children?
Yep. So the short answer to that is yes. All the areas that we focused on over the years, we continue to put energies and efforts to, but it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the fact that with less staffing, we have to be much more focused, and some of the broader, just the range of activity that we may have engaged in, we now need to be much more selective about where is our biggest bang for the buck for this resource, right? So we only have sort of X amount of patrol officers, X amount of time, right? So where is the best place to put that? So right now we put energies into the senior schools in particular. Officers still do visit, primary, middle, et cetera, but honestly or frankly, not with the same regularity as they did when the department had, 15 people. So yeah.
I'm glad you spoke about numbers. I don't want to just stick with the script. You said about numbers. How many police officers are under your remit? Compared to the past, I remember at one point there were 417, 402.
Right.
What's the number now?
So the establishment strength is around 407, but we're funded for 400 police officers. We've got, and the actual number today is 394, I believe, and 21 of them are in training. So, there's 20 officers that are in training, which will be deployed later in the summer. Yeah.
Has your budget been cut, or has your budget stabilized? Has it been?
The budget is very similar to previous years in terms of operational OPEX, operational expenditure. Yeah.
Are you sufficed with your budget?
Well, one can never have too much money, okay. And I think a reality of the situation. In fact, every single government department is there just isn't as much money to go around. So you really need to be sure that you're delivering value for services and maximizing the results, for the resources that you have. I would. Without a doubt, like any other department head, I think, ask for more, but government have to, really assess where those needs are and where the finances are best put.
Your predecessor spoke a bit of community policing. What does it look like in today's environment? As a matter of fact, the central parishes are under siege, seems to be perceived to be under siege. With daylight crime that was unthinkable a few years ago. Do you foresee soon when more officers are going to be armed on a regular basis?
Well, it's difficult to sort of project what the future hold. What I can assure you is that that is not on the horizon. That's not on the discussions sort of today. Absolutely. And in terms of some of the challenges that the central neighborhoods are experiencing, I think, particularly Deepdale, for example. So there's a focus there. Patrols will be there will be increased patrols in that area. There's been increased engagement in that area. I've been fortunate to go out a couple times. On one of them. Two of them with Minister Keynes. We went into the area. We met area residents. We are trying to encourage the area residents to have sort of more confidence to engage with some of the men that are causing some of the challenges in that area, in addition to the enforcement efforts that are going on, because there's real criminality taking place, and there's an opportunity for the police to help, displace or disrupt some of the activity that's going on.
You did say Minister Keynes. Mm-hmm. Minister Keynes or Minister Renee Mean?
Keynes.
Okay. And P. Keynes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to correct you. You know how
no, he's quite active there. Yeah.
You know how the commenters will correct you and pecans.
Yeah, and in fairness, sorry,
he's not a minister.
Right. Sorry. Good point.
Yes, sir.
And also Minister Ming.
Okay.
Yeah, was also out there. Yeah. Good point. Well spotted,
yes,
Trevor.
I've got your back. Listen, these are testing times. The community at large, with all sorts of security measures to be undertaken by police. What is the mood like? What is the mood like in the police service, and how are the officers dealing with their day-to-day duties?
Right. So I think it's already been it's previously been reported in the media. I think one of the issues that we are facing, as is the broader community, is this sense of fatigue. Mm-hmm. Not sense, but fatigue. Mm-hmm. And I've commented before that as I sort of walk across the organization and have conversations, one of the reflections that I often have is that people are genuinely tired, like just tired. And so I think that impacts service delivery, and that's where welfare comes into it. I mean, the stresses are still there, the impacts of COVID and how that's fundamentally affected how we relate, and some of the things about how we would have naturally de-stressed. When we're outside of the organization, how that helps us to recover and energize ourselves. Some of that is just not there to the degree that it used to. It's not unique to police. Mm-hmm. You'll see that, I think, across the society generally. But that's one of my sort of enduring observations. And I think combined with that staffing levels are less than what we have traditionally been accustomed to. It's providing the same level of service with reduced staffing. So another example, one of the ways this plays out is when I was a young officer coming along in the organization. We have static duties where we used to sort of staff the airport. We might staff the government house or premier's residence, and just nobody wanted to do that. It was like so boring. You just didn't want to do that, right? You signed up to do what the pamphlet said, to go out and do what we would call real policing work, right? Whereas you will hear people actually complain, I can't catch a static. I'm always on the road. And what that means is, they're always responding, which is not so bad, but they're picking up paperwork. And very often when they go to a static posting, one, it means that they're not necessarily picking up additional work, but also they have the time to get to that paperwork. So that's one of the challenges that we need to manage, and we're looking at some a bit of out-of-the-box thinking around that. The other, I think, upshot to that is we do have 21 new recruits coming. So you can't underestimate the impact of being 20 officers down, and that's like not an insignificant amount of people, or that is a significant amount of people. So that's going to be like, fresh rain, on the landscape. So, a combination of ideas that we're looking a little bit out of the box, which might involve bringing back some retired officers to look at administrative kinds of work. And just, thank the good Lord that we are able to, move forward with bringing new people into the organization.
The last 2 years have been extremely stressful for the whole of Bermuda, the rest of the world. How stressful has it been on the BPS? I mean, we would experience the same stress that would be experienced in general. Your numbers, your fluctuation numbers, officers out, officers with COVID, officers, family members, close contact.
We're actually pretty good in terms of managing that. In my view, we had some very rapid responses when there were outbreaks of COVID in terms of containing it, doing contact tracing very quickly ourselves. So for a long time, we actually did quite well managing that. So that wasn't terribly bad. And just in terms of general attrition, it's about the same. In fact, it's probably slightly lowered, other than through retirements, mandatory retirements. It's probably stayed about the same.
Good stuff. There are a number of outstanding investigations highlighted over the past year or two. For example, the missing $800,000 that the failed venture at Vedco is still active. Around the election period, the previous commissioner, Kirbishley, and the governor, the premier exactly, has asked police to put a response into the case, and asking some of the politicians to come forward with information about the project. Where is the investigation?
So Trevor, to be frank,
are we going to bring anyone going to be brought to
so as long
charges for this?
So, I mean, as long as matters remain under investigation, that is their status, and that is the line. We don't normally comment on whether things are ongoing. The process will be investigations are completed, a file is completed, and that file would be presented to the Director of Public Prosecutions to review for charging approval. So I didn't sort of prepare for here's where we are, and to be honest, I probably wouldn't be discussing it in the first place. But suffice it to say that a number of let's call them sensitive investigations remain ongoing, and as they come to a point where it's appropriate for public comment, then that will occur.
But your finger's still on the pulse.
Finger's still on the pulse. Yeah. So once police are engaged around an investigation, they have to come to a natural conclusion, and the process they follow is the same process that's been around for a lot of years, right? So a change in leadership doesn't bring about a change in that process, because everybody who's the onlookers are just going to like, what's going on here? Like, why did that happen? There's a number of checks and balances around that, both internally and externally.
But as you as the commissioner, if this was the file and the file's on your desk, you might want to get updated, correct?
Yeah, I do get updates, but that's not the same as like a charging decision or something like that. These critical matters go to the Director of Public Prosecutions for a completed file, and very often in that process, obviously they make a decision. But even on the journey to that decision, the Office of DPP or the DPP herself would be saying, "Listen, I need these further actions done so that I have the completest picture as I think I'm capable of have to make the decisions."
A lot of times you've been heard about white collar crime. I'm sure you have your division that is specific on white collar crime, cyber crime. What's the latest in that department? So,
in NAMLAC, National Anti-Money Laundering Committee, which is a multi-agency, cross government department or just cross multi-agency group that's responsible for ensuring that Bermuda is in compliant with legislation, so that when we go through these assessments, we pass with flying colors, so that our jurisdiction remains, a blue chip jurisdiction where we have a very good reputation. So there's, in the context of financial crime, we're fairly active in that area, working across government with other different government departments, and I think things are on the up and up. When you look at I think Bermuda as a jurisdiction, we have had over a number of years concerted efforts to ensure that we are responsive to the compliance regimes that are imposed on us and actually generated ourselves.
Good stuff. We've had an upsurge in road traffic accidents. You see it in all reports. Is this concerning to you?
So it is very concerning. What is the most concerning to me really is the change in general driver behavior on the road. And when you look at the statistics, so we would talk about damage only accidents. Those are more on the more minor end. Mm-hmm. If you actually saw that chart, it would be coming down dramatically, way down. However, I think some real context around that. There's some real context there, and that is back in the day when we had 480 police officers, 450 police officers. We attended all. Not all, but way more damage only accidents. We don't. We simply do not have the capacity to do that. So we are of the view that the decline, which really does look like that, is really about changes in terms of how we are responding. So we have to prioritize our response, and that was one of the ones that are deprioritized. So now people are encouraged to settle amongst themselves, exchange details, go to their insurers to resolve the accident. So we think that has contributed to the decline. When you look at the statistics around serious injuries, whilst it goes up and down like that, when you step back from the look of that, it's about the same or slightly going down, right? But that's over 10-year kind of perspective, right? Fatalities is about the same. Now, when I say about the same, obviously we had 17 last year, we have 3 this year, so we may be in a spike. But again, when you step back from the data, overall, the trends are about the same. It's difficult to see a trend. The line kind of looks, like that, so it's difficult to see that trend. Nonetheless, Trevor, I'm sure yourself and many members of the community express frustration at driver behavior. And clearly there's been a change in attitudes towards that. As a result, we have stepped up our enforcement efforts so that people are like, okay, we're out there, and there's the possibility of getting a ticket that hopefully is in people's mind as they make some of those choices. We're engaged with Ministry of Transport, Road Safety Council about education and what we can do to change driver behavior. And when you look at fatalities, without a doubt, speed and alcohol play the biggest part of that. So there's a commitment on us to step up our roadside sobriety checks efforts, and clearly the public would have experienced or seen a step change in enforcement.
Any thoughts of having the roadside sobrieties every week?
Yeah, there are, all the time. The challenge is that they are incredibly resource intensive. You have like 3 stations that you need to go. People just don't really have a sense of just how resource intensive roadside sobriety is. So when we bring together teams of people to do roadside sobriety checks, something else isn't being done. And we have to consistently look at what the priorities are, and is this the biggest bang for our buck in this moment? Clearly, gun and gang crime and reducing road harm are top of the tree kind of items. So very often those resources are being juggled in those particular endeavors.
Do you think the advent of this cell phone, and everyone takes a picture of every accident that you see and it's posted on social media, does that add to the perception that it's a lot of activity going on in our roads?
Without a doubt, social media plays a strong role in how people feel about the community that they live at. And social media, it doesn't dictate, but it really does influence and impact how people feel. To your point, just to that point, sorry, I have asked for the organization to, my words are, listen, we need to tell our story, because if we don't tell our story, other people are going to make it up for us, or people are simply not going to know what it is we're doing. So through our social media pages, we've made a concerted effort to drip feed more of what it is we're doing, particularly around traffic enforcement, and certainly when crimes are happening and things like that, to do that. But where I really want to see is in the proactive work, so people have this awareness that the police are out there doing it, right? So to circle back to your question, I think the issue is very much, what is the impact of social media on the psyche of the community? And it's quite impactful. And we need to do what we can to get our message out there, to get our story out there, so that it sits next to, some of the other stories that are out there.
I've noticed that the Bermuda Police Service and the officers from TCD are in joint consultation with early mornings road checks.
Yep.
That's been a win-win. And one more question I want to add with that. Is there a noise level? It used to be years ago, there was a noise level for bikes. Is that going out the door? Two questions in one.
Okay, so the win-win. One of our strategic priorities is working in partnership. So whenever we have a problem, we look to see how can we work in partnership with other agencies, entities to respond to this problem. So without a doubt, TCD enforcement officers and BPS officers working hand in hand is, I think, a good thing, and I think that they would say the same thing. So that's been a win-win. That's actually been ongoing for a number of years, to be frank. Sorry, no, what was the other one? Noise. So the laws on our books around objection, no, they haven't. They haven't changed. So it's still, and I'm just trying to think, it's probably motor car construction equipment and use infraction. And I don't know if it's a decibel or just objectionable, but it's loud.
Bikes. Yeah. I remember years ago, bikes, they were...
went to TCD, tested for, there was the noise thing. Yeah. So yeah, there is, I'm sure that still happens today. Mm-hmm. But it's been a time-honored tradition that, for the one day you have to do your inspection, your bike is almost factory fitted, and then after that
you go back to.
Yeah.
And please don't focus really. I mean, there's a lot more activity going on, so that's
an example of, I think,
a minor infraction.
Well, very often we will use those types of offenses to get to people who are causing harm.
Okay.
So without a doubt, I'm not going to say that it is the prime focus, but I would like to think that if somebody is driving by with an objectionably loud motorcycle, that police officers will stop and take action.
Commissioner, what do you believe it will take to reduce the incidence of violent crime, knife and gun violence, to be specific? Do you see this as one of your biggest challenges? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the other challenges that you're faced with? As police are under the governor's remit, and we did speak about this off camera, you do have regular consultation meetings with Her Excellency Governor Lauji and the Minister of National Security.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a lot to unpick there. Going back to the beginning, what will it take to stop the violence? I mean, I have sort of said this.
Is this your biggest challenge?
Biggest, I think.
One-off.
It's one-off, gun and gang crime and reducing road harm are sort of probably the operationally, top of the tree kinds of issues. What will it take to stop violence? I think we really need to look at that from two different perspectives. And if we don't look at it from two different perspectives, we're in absolute danger of not changing the trajectory that we're on. So there is, I liken it to a bit of a tap running, right? So the police are really there and are equipped and trained to clean up the mess, to clean up the water. So, we will respond with enforcement efforts when we see signs of tension. We will respond with disruption efforts when we're able to see that tension brewing. In terms of stopping, searching, doing drug warrants where that's lawful. And obviously investigating, incarcerating, or catching and convicting criminals, right? So that's what we do. That's akin or analogous to the water being spilled and us cleaning it up, right? But what we really need to do as a community is turn the tap off, or at least slow the flow, right? And that's about what causes Johnny to think or decide that arming him or herself, well, it's mostly him, arming himself and going out and shooting somebody is an appropriate response to violence. And that's where it's just going to require a more joined up, concerted effort from the broader community to examine some of these social ills. I've said it multiple times that violence is a social ill that happens to be a crime. You will not solve it by just addressing the crime, right? And yes, absolutely, police have a role to play in enforcement, in cleaning up that mess. But that's not going to, if it just keeps coming and just keeps coming, you may reach a capacity or a point where you just don't have the capacity to address it. Fortunately, we've had an undertaking from government. You hear the Minister of National Security sort of lead on this and examining what are the social sort of responses to addressing these social ills, and some of them are things like economic opportunity, education. It's off the top of my head. And hopefully in time we're going to see some concerted efforts and possibly some changes. It's been said probably that there's I don't know, let's just pull a reasonable number out and just say maybe 50 at-risk families, people, and if we as a society really wrapped around those 50 for a long period of time, then we may see a significant change in our trajectory. That significant change really is about the community, the society, etc. It's not so much the crime part, but to be very clear, enforcement does play a role, and we're committed to making Bermuda, to making our communities safer.
A few years back, I would say 6 to 7 years back, are there projections of a specific amount of guns on the street? Do you see an increased amount of guns on our street, meaning by ballistics? Have you seen an uptick on many guns on the streets?
Okay, so traditionally, you saw a number of firearms reused, recycled. You still see that, but there is evidence of new firearms being introduced. You've asked an interesting question. I might actually graph the amount of times there's new firearms, but anecdotally I would say that there are new firearms that have been imported and being circulated, brought into Bermuda and circulated.
Here of late, so I would say for the last 2 years, we've had
firearms that have been imported.
We've had forgive me.
Yeah.
We've been 4 or 5 flights coming in. If they're not coming through the airport, how are they getting here?
Anywhere goods or people come in is how they're coming in. Literally anywhere. Any way goods or people are arriving on this island is how firearms could be imported.
Okay, let's wrap up. We only got about 5 minutes. I know you have a very
Yes, yeah.
Commissioner Mike, what might you want to say to your viewers before we wrap up?
Well, I think in closing, really, I would like to say that the Bermuda Police Service is committed to making Bermuda safer. I very often just say that not remind people, because I don't think they be reminded, but that's why we exist, right? And that's the mission that we intend to fulfill. Community policing remains our focus. Enforcement remains our focus. Partnership, which is one of the things that we're really trying to broaden our perspective on, to get more people involved. And some of that is about maybe handing off a little bit of responsibility, and some of it is about seeing how we can solve some other people's challenges, other organizational kind of challenges. And one of the ones that doesn't get too much in terms of strategic priorities, one of the ones that doesn't get as much focus is digital policing. So we want to take advantage of the latest technology to assist in fighting crime. So that's one of our other strategic priorities. But on the whole, I just think, Bermuda, I'm certainly committed to dealing with law enforcement from a fair kind of perspective. That's something that's very important to me. This notion of customer service and treating people like they should be treated fairly is very important to me, and those are some of the things that you will hear me talk about and the organization move to prioritize.
With about 3 minutes left on our program, a question just came to me. Does the police service still have a narcotic squad? Because yes?
The short answer is yes. But I really do like to be clear, transparent, because people will remember when I joined, narcotics was 20 plus people. Again, when I joined, and very often when people talk about, we don't see as many police officers, on the streets, depending on how old they are, and they tend to be people my age. Okay, our age, right? Right, we had 480 cops.
Yeah.
Right, we've got 380 now.
20
in training school. Yeah.
You had to be a good runner back then.
I hear you. So yes, we do have our narcotics department. We used to have, a street enforcement team. Now the narcotics department really are focused on more of those larger scale importations. Okay. And we've got the police support unit, gang targeting team that are, and even roads policing unit that are focused more on the street level distribution of narcotics and enforcement of that activity. But the short answer is yes, we still do. Depending on the age of that individual, it's less.
The field agency, you still have that department, field agencies?
Field intelligence officers?
Field intelligence, that's it.
No, but we've shifted the intelligence function down to the entire organization.
Commish, thank you very much for joining us. This has been very intriguing.
Well, I hope that's a good thing.
Yes, sir. Yes. Welcome aboard as the commissioner. I'm sure your door is always open if one wants to get a hold of you.
Yep. In fact, let me just give a little bit, maybe some contact information.
Yes,
obviously, there's the traditional ways that people can get in contact with the police. 295-0011. 211 is a great resource that people can use, because the officers who staff the 211 desk have a little bit more time. 911 should only be for emergencies. And if you want to send me an email directly, the address is fairly simple. It's cop@bps.bm. cop@bps.bm. And I am always keen to engage with individuals who want to talk about either, the compliment us on the quality of service they receive or comment on the quality of service they receive looking for a change. I like to engage with individuals that are thinking about, well, this is what I think the community could use, and this is how, and just as importantly, as this is what I'm prepared to do to help. Yeah.
Solutions.
Yep. Yep.
Good stuff. So there we have it. Our new Commissioner of Police, Darren Simons. This has been a TNN State of Affairs news broadcast in conjunction with Crimson Multimedia and Channel 82. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, and stay tuned for our next program.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.